Across the United States, churches are widely seen as places of safety, trust, and moral guidance for millions of Americans. They preach honesty from the pulpit, teach accountability in Bible studies, and speak constantly about justice and righteousness. And yet, over the years, countless stories have emerged from investigative journalism, legal proceedings, and survivor testimonies that raise a genuinely difficult and painful question. Why do some churches choose silence and concealment when serious crimes occur within their walls? Why does the institution that teaches truth sometimes hide it? This is absolutely not a story about all churches, and we need to be crystal clear about that up front. It's not a story attacking faith itself or Christianity as a whole. Millions of churches across America operate with complete transparency, ethical standards, and genuine care for vulnerable people. They report crimes immediately, cooperate with authorities, and prioritize victims over institutional reputation. But history clearly shows that when institutions face scandal, whether they're religious, educational, corporate, or governmental, some respond with openness and accountability while others respond with concealment and denial. This pattern compels us to look deeper. We must understand the underlying dynamics. So the fundamental question we need to explore carefully becomes, what specific pressures and factors lead some churches to cover up serious wrongdoing instead of confronting it honestly? What makes silence feel like the better option, even when it causes profound harm? This is an investigative journey into the heart of institutional integrity. Churches are fundamentally built on trust in ways that most other institutions aren't. Congregations trust pastors, elders, and ministry leaders not just with spiritual guidance, but with their emotional vulnerability, their family struggles, and their social connections. People share their deepest problems with church leaders, often in sacred confidence. They leave their children in church care, believing them to be in the safest possible hands. They follow spiritual direction that shapes major life decisions, placing immense faith in their leaders' wisdom. Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much," emphasizing how crucial trustworthiness is to leadership. This deep trust is a cornerstone of faith communities. When that trust is strong and deeply established over years, accusations against trusted leaders can feel literally unthinkable to congregation members. "Not our pastor, we know him," they might say. "Not this ministry, they've helped so many people." This immediate dismissal is a natural human response to perceived threats against something deeply valued. So we have to ask honestly, does deep established trust sometimes actually make accountability more difficult rather than easier? Does trusting someone completely make us blind to warning signs we should be seeing? Because trust is essential for community, but unchecked trust can become dangerous, creating a shield for misconduct. Church leaders, often with the best intentions, frequently worry intensely about institutional reputation and public perception. A major public scandal involving criminal behavior can mean devastating consequences. These include significant loss of members who leave in disillusionment, dramatic loss of donations that fund ministry operations, and a profound loss of community influence and moral authority. Such events can cause permanent damage to how the church is perceived, both internally and externally. In moments of crisis, when accusations surface, protecting the institution can start feeling like protecting the faith itself in leaders' minds. If the church fails, doesn't the gospel fail with it? This perceived existential threat can warp judgment. But this protective instinct raises a genuinely serious question. Does protecting an institution's reputation ever legitimately come at the cost of justice for victims? Can institutional survival justify silence about crimes? Because those are fundamentally different priorities. Caring for people who've been harmed versus caring for the organization's image. And when those priorities conflict, which one should win? That's not a theoretical question. It's a choice that church leaders have faced and will face again, with profound implications for all involved. The pressure to maintain an image of sanctity can tragically overshadow the call for righteousness. Many churches, especially larger ones and those with strong denominational structures, operate with clearly defined leadership hierarchies. Authority often flows from the top down, centralizing decisions with senior pastors or boards. Direct questioning of authority can be actively discouraged or even treated as rebellion or spiritual weakness. Submission to leadership gets taught as a biblical principle, sometimes without the necessary balance of discernment. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, "Test everything, hold fast what is good," which should encourage evaluation and discernment. But that's not always how authority functions in practice, leading to an environment where dissent is stifled. So we're forced to ask, when leadership is rarely challenged, when questioning is seen as disloyal, who actually ensures accountability? Who has the power and courage to say this is wrong to leaders at the top? Without real accountability mechanisms, independent oversight, transparent financial practices, outside reporting requirements, power can become self-protecting. Leaders can effectively investigate themselves, which rarely produces honest conclusions when their own positions are at stake. This creates a dangerous vacuum where misconduct can flourish unchecked. The very structure designed for order can inadvertently become a barrier to justice. Churches have centuries of experience addressing moral failure and spiritual sin through established processes. These include confession of wrongdoing, genuine repentance and changed behavior, and extending forgiveness and restoration. That's core to Christian theology and practice, offering a path to spiritual healing. But crimes are fundamentally different from personal moral failures. Crimes involve specific victims who've been harmed, civil laws that exist outside religious authority, and legal consequences including prosecution and incarceration. Some churches, especially those without legal expertise, may mistakenly treat serious crimes as internal spiritual matters that can be handled through prayer, counseling, and forgiveness. This conflation is a critical error. This confusion leads to a crucial distinction we need to understand. When does forgiveness, which is central to Christian teaching, become avoidance of legal responsibility and justice? Can you forgive someone spiritually while still reporting them to authorities? Should you? These are not mutually exclusive concepts, because forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, and it shouldn't prevent justice for victims. But some churches struggle to hold those concepts together, thinking they have to choose between Christian grace and secular justice. This false dichotomy often leads to tragic outcomes for victims and perpetuates cycles of abuse. Church communities are often incredibly close-knit in ways that secular organizations aren't. Members genuinely feel like family, having supported each other through deaths, illnesses, marriages, and crises. That closeness creates powerful bonds, fostering a sense of belonging and mutual support. But it also creates intense social pressure around accusations of wrongdoing. Speaking out publicly about crimes can feel like betraying people you love, shattering the very fabric of the community. Remaining silent can feel like loyalty to your community and protecting people you care about. Nobody wants to be the person who destroys their church family. Proverbs 31:8 says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves," which should include victims of abuse and crimes who often have no voice or power. So we have to ask, does loyalty to a community, even a faith community, ever legitimately conflict with moral courage and doing what's right? Is there a point where loyalty becomes complicity? Because silence protects perpetrators and institutions while leaving victims isolated and unheard. That's not an abstract ethical dilemma. It's a real choice people face when they know something wrong has happened. The weight of community expectation can be immense, but true loyalty must extend to justice. In recent years, especially following major public scandals and legal actions, many churches and denominations have adopted significant reforms. These include comprehensive safeguarding policies with background checks and training, mandatory external reporting requirements for abuse allegations, and independent oversight committees that aren't controlled by church leadership. Transparent investigation processes are also becoming more common. These reforms represent recognition of past failures and genuine attempts to do better. Many church leaders have learned painful lessons and are working hard to create safer environments. This shift indicates a growing awareness that institutional protection cannot come at the expense of human safety and justice. But the larger question that extends beyond specific policies remains. Can transparency about problems and failures actually strengthen faith and institutional trust rather than weakening them? Or does admitting mistakes necessarily damage the church? Because the evidence suggests that cover ups ultimately cause far more damage than honesty ever does. People can handle truth. What destroys trust permanently is discovering they've been lied to and manipulated for years to protect an institution's image. True integrity is built on facing difficult truths, not hiding them. This is a crucial lesson for all institutions. Let me leave you with some important questions to wrestle with. Why do institutions generally, not just churches, but schools, corporations, governments, sometimes prioritize institutional survival over truth and justice? What is it about organizational self-preservation that can override moral obligations? This is a universal human challenge. How can churches genuinely balance grace and forgiveness, which are central to Christian faith, with justice and accountability, which are equally important? And what responsibilities do both leaders and ordinary congregation members share when wrongdoing occurs? Is it only leaders' responsibility, or does every member have obligations to speak truth and demand accountability? These are not easy questions, but they are vital. Faith calls for honesty and truth-telling. Justice calls for accountability when people are harmed. When churches face serious wrongdoing within their communities, how they respond matters enormously, not just for institutional reputation, but for maintaining trust, enabling healing for victims, and preserving integrity. The answers to when and how to respond are genuinely complex. But asking these difficult questions is absolutely necessary for any institution that claims moral authority. This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed. We invite you to join this crucial conversation. Subscribe to our channel for more investigative insights, share your thoughtful perspectives in the comments below, and help us in the collective search for truth and justice.